as we allow people in. Just bear with us. Thank you. And yeah, we have 2 more minutes until we start this very exciting series. So just bear with us. We're live on Facebook now, and we're just waiting for more devotees to join and the sessions to start at 7:30. Okay. So, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you so much for joining the Krishna Balaram Youth Group. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, and please accept my humble obeisances. So, I am Arvash. I am going to be the facilitator in terms of emceeing for tonight. And I'm so excited to be sharing this very interesting series of classes, if you want to say that, just getting to know the 8 principal Sakhis or friends of Radha Krishna. And the series is the Asta-sakhis and getting to know them. And tonight we're so excited to have Her Grace Sarabi Kunj Devi Dasi join us, who was going to take us on a little bit of a journey into the personalities of Chitralekha and Indulekha Sakhis. And who are these personalities? What are their relationships with Krishna? What services do they do for Krishna? And just them as personalities in Krishna Leela. So we're definitely going to go into Chitralekha and Indulekha Sakhi, but let's get to know our speaker for tonight. So today we're joined by Her Grace Sarabi Kunj Devi Dasi. She has been practicing Krishna consciousness for 5 years, and two of her favorite aspects of Krishna consciousness is the philosophy and the association of devotees. She is a disciple of His Holiness Kadamba Swami, and one of her favorite things to do in her spare time is to make Krishna conscious videos. She enjoys traveling, reading Shastra, spending quality time with friends and family. Personally, her 2 favorite of Srila Prabhupada's books is Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. And her current services include book distribution, helping online, Zoom sessions, and other technical support. And we all know what an important service that is right now in our communities and even in the world. So, thank you for that. And then lastly, preaching and proofreading and production of her spiritual master's books. So we're joined by a very, very amazing person, and we're so excited to hear from her about these 2 Sakhis. And with that, I hand over to you, Sarabi Kunj. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And if you have any comments, questions, pop it down in the comment section on Zoom or on Facebook, and we will respond to them at the end of the class. Thank you. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Arvash, for that introduction and for thinking of me and engaging me in service in this way. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I think this topic is very interesting, and I don't know much about the Gopis, so I was very grateful to be kind of forced in a way to have to go and research about them. And whenever I think about the Gopis, it always comes across how deeply absorbed they are in Krishna's service and how it's so different from our lives. We have times when we are busy engaged in our material activities and times when we are engaged in spiritual activities. But the Gopis don't have anything other than Krishna. Like, can you imagine what it's like to just wake up and you're always thinking of Krishna, and everything you do, you're always thinking of Krishna, and even when you're sleeping, you're thinking of Krishna. So it's a very exalted way of life, and I definitely don't understand it. But what has come across from the research I've done on the Gopis is that they all have very different ways to serve and please Krishna with their unique talents. And it's a nice example for us to learn from, because we all have different skills, and we can offer those skills to Krishna in different ways. And they're always assisting Srimati Radharani in serving Krishna, because she is the topmost devotee. Radhastami is coming up on Wednesday, so we can really meditate on how she is the topmost, and everybody is just serving her, assisting her in her service to Krishna. And we are following in that in those footsteps, because we serve Krishna through a superior Vaishnava also, our spiritual masters. So it brings the elevated gopis to something we can kind of relate to in a small way. So Arvash asked me to speak on Indulekha Devi and Chitralekha Saki. And I just have a few notes, which is actually Janani Vas Prabhu's notes from the Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika by Srila Rupa Goswami. Indulekha Devi is known as the leader of the messengers. In our Mayapur altar, the deity of Indulekha was installed in 1986 before the Gaur Purnima festival. So the way the deities were installed in Mayapur was that it was Radha Madhava first, and then 4 Sakhis, and then later on another 4 Sakhis. So Indulekha was part of the first 4 that were installed. And I have a picture of her feet that I wanted to share, because it's quite rare to get a picture of her feet. Where is it? Well, this is her first. Can you all see that? This is Indulekha Saki, and this is her feet. Jai. So she stands next to Vishaka, and she's second to the right from Srimati Radharani. Her father's name is Sagar, her mother is Vela, and her husband's name is Durbala. Her complexion is described as greenish yellow, and her clothing is the color of pomegranate flowers. So it's a light reddish. The village where she lives is Anjanoka, and I was very fortunate to visit this village last year when I went to Vrindavan. Her grove is called Purnendu, which means full moon, and it's located to the southeast of Radhakund. It is white like the moon and has a golden aura. Indulekha's favorite instrument is the manjira, or finger cymbals. Her main service is to prepare nectarian foods for the divine couple, and some say that another of her primary services is dancing. In Sridham Mayapur, she can be seen offering a silver box full of tambula to Sri Sri Radha Madhava. Indulekha Devi is 3 days younger than Srimati Radharani and is eternally 14 years, 2 months, and 10.5 days old. Her mood is of a heroine who suffers when her beloved is far away, and her temperament is contrary and hot-tempered. Indulekha Devi is well known for her singing ability, just like her father, who is a famous singer. She is learned in the science of snake charming and also very expert in palmistry. She is expert in stringing different kinds of necklaces and doing other kinds of beadwork. Her other areas of expertise include painting pictures, decorating the teeth with red substances, and weaving cloth. Indulekha Devi is aware of all of the divine couple's secrets, and she carries the auspicious messages of the divine couple in her hand. In this way, she creates the good fortune of Radha and Krishna, increasing their mutual love and attraction. She is also the leader of the maidservants who fashion ornaments and clothing and who guard the treasury. Her maidservant is Rati Manjari. This is from the Sri Sri Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika by Srila Rupa Goswami and the Sri Gaur Ganadesh Dipika by Srila Kavi Karnapur. So that is what I have on Indulekha Saki. Now I will speak on Chitralekha. So let me first share a picture of Chitralekha. This is Chitralekha in Mayapur. She was installed in the year 1992, one of the last 4 Asta-sakhis to be installed in Mayapur. She stands third on Madhava's right. Chitra Devi's father's name is Chatura, and her mother is Charchika, and her husband is Pitara. She has the beautiful complexion of saffron. She wears cloth which is glossy like a host of radiant crystals. Her village is Chiksholi. Her grove is situated on the eastern side of Sri Radhakund and is called Padma Kinjalka, or Lotus Hole, or Chitranandada, and is colored with variegated hues which can be termed as Chitra. Chitra's favorite instrument is a sitar like veena. Her specialized service to the divine couple is preparing cloves and flower garlands. On the altar in Mayapur, she can be seen offering a box with refreshing betel nut, sometimes along with some jewels. She's 26 days younger than Srimati Radhika, being eternally 14 years, 7 months, and 14 days old. She has the mood of a heroine who goes out for secretive meetings with her beloved. Chitra has an exalted, soft temperament known as Adhika Mirdvi. Her heart is full of wonderfully variegated moods, overflowing with compassion. She's known as the compassionate-hearted one. Shri and Shri Krishna are very affectionate toward each other. Chitra Devi is very learned in the astrological sciences, just like her father. She has special knowledge of secret ways of speaking and is a scholar of many foreign languages. Chitra Devi can read between the lines of books and letters written in many different languages, perceiving the hidden intentions of the author. She's also fully versed in the scriptures of botany, snake charming mantras, and the theoretical and practical activities of protecting domestic animals. She is especially skilled at gardening, and she is the leader of the servants who collect medicinal and other useful herbs from the forest. Chitra Devi is expert in playing music on pots filled with varying degrees of water. She has the ability to identify the ingredients used in cooked food merely by glancing at it. If she is presented with any type of milk, she can tell which animal it comes from. And simply by looking at honey, she can easily classify which type of bee collected the honey. She is expert in crafting various utensils from glass. Chitra Devi has perfect hands in cooking various palatable foodstuffs and nectar drinks. Her maidservant is Rasa Manjari. This is also from the Sri Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika by Srila Rupa Goswami and Sri Gaur Ganadesh Dipika by Srila Kavi Karnapur. So when it comes to the gopis, I always think, how can I understand them? I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but for me, it feels very elevated. It feels like topics I can't really get into. So I thought of looking at the mood of the gopis as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Gopi Songs of Separation, Canto 10, Chapter 31, verses 8 and 9 are as follows. The gopis are here singing songs of separation for Krishna. O lotus-eyed one, your sweet voice and charming words, which attract the minds of the intelligent, are bewildering us more and more. Our dear hero, please revive your maidservants with the nectar of your lips. The nectar of your words and the descriptions of your activities are the life and soul of those suffering in this material world. These narrations, transmitted by learned sages, eradicate one's sinful reactions and bestow good fortune upon whoever hears them. These narrations are broadcast all over the world and are filled with spiritual power. Certainly, those who spread the message of Godhead are most munificent. So, this verse actually expresses the mood of the gopis because their mood is to simply glorify and spread the glories of Krishna. They're always engaging more and more souls in serving Krishna because it's not about them. It's not for their enjoyment. It's only for the pleasure of Krishna. They're always thinking, how can I engage more and more people in pleasing Krishna? Because they know that Krishna's happiness, Krishna is able to experience unlimited happiness. So there's no limit to how much he can reciprocate with anyone. For us, our reciprocation is very limited. We have our small circles where we can only really engage deeply with a few people. But Krishna can engage deeply and lovingly with unlimited number of people. So the gopis are always thinking that if I engage more and more people in Krishna's service, then he will experience more and more happiness. So this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 31, verse 9, is actually a Sankirtan verse. And I was reflecting that in this age, the way in which we can understand the gopis' pastimes is by engaging in the Sankirtan movement. That is actually the way we can understand it. We don't actually have the intelligence or purity to understand the gopis' pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan with Krishna. But for us, our experience is that Lord Chaitanya has come and the gopis came as his personal associates to help him spread Krishna consciousness throughout this world, throughout this universe, for all the suffering souls. They see the suffering of all the souls here in this material world, and they've come to give relief. So a way in which we can understand the pastimes of the gopis and try to engage in the pastimes of the gopis is by engaging in the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. I wanted to read something from this book, Our Family Business. It's written by Vaisheshika Prabhu. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And he speaks about how book distribution and Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, is actually following in the mood of the gopis. So Rameshwar Prabhu, who was the Sankirtan leader in Los Angeles in 1974, had understood that by distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, the Sankirtan devotees were actually following in the mood of the gopis. They were very much experiencing those pastimes. And this is what Rameshwar Prabhu wrote. I began to see that the Sankirtan devotees were in direct contact with the storehouse of love of Godhead that Lord Chaitanya had broken open 500 years before, and that Srila Prabhupada had brought that same storehouse to the earth again. The Sankirtan devotees were connected to Srila Prabhupada and also, therefore, to the divine pleasure and energy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through this service. It was flowing through his divine grace, filling the world with ecstasy and transcendental knowledge. So Rameshwar Prabhu started giving classes about how book distribution is a tasteful arrangement for souls to be joined in loving service to Krishna, a service that follows the mood of the gopis. And people were questioning, is this the correct understanding? So Nandulal Devi Dasi wrote to Srila Prabhupada to just clarify. So she wrote in May 23, 1974. I have heard Rameshwar Prabhu in Los Angeles say that when we were performing Sankirtan, we are engaged in the Leela of Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya is the union of Radha and Krishna, and he explained that just as Radharani is even more anxious to arrange for the other gopis to meet with Krishna than she is for herself to meet Krishna, and that the other gopis are also always trying to think of ways in which to arrange meetings between Radha and Krishna. So when the devotees are going out and trying to engage the suffering conditioned souls, actually what we are doing is trying to arrange for some of her lost souls to meet with Krishna once again, and that this is the Leela of Lord Chaitanya. Is this the proper understanding of Sankirtan? Srila Prabhupada replied, saying, the explanation given by Rameshwar that Sankirtan is Lord Chaitanya's Leela, which he compares to the gopis trying to engage in Krishna's service, is the correct understanding. So this can be our impetus to start or continue sharing the message of Krishna consciousness. It doesn't always have to be through book distribution that's if that's not really your natural inclination, but it can be through sharing kirtan, singing, glorifying, sharing pictures of the deities, distributing prasadam, so many different ways, holding preaching programs, anything to just connect the conditioned souls to Krishna, because we have become greatly fortunate by receiving this mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And if we know we're fortunate, then what are we meant to do about it? We have to share that good fortune with others. And that will please the gopis. That's one of the ways we can actually serve the gopis. Because if you think about it, our line of acharyas are actually directly serving the gopis. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani. And all of our acharyas are servants of the gopis. And Krishna is unhappy to see the suffering conditioned souls. So we're actually meant to relieve him of this unhappiness by trying to give Krishna consciousness to everyone. That is, Vijay Prabhu said, that is service. When we see Krishna is seeing all these conditioned souls who are meant to be serving him, and they can become happy by serving him, but they don't know. So we can help alleviate that unhappiness of Krishna by saying, don't worry, we will bring them to you. We will bring more and more souls to you, for you to experience that transcendental pleasure, for you to experience pleasure and reciprocation with him. Srila Prabhupada writes in a purport to Bhagavad Gita 13:8-12 that if we do not elevate people to the platform of spiritual knowledge, that is actually practicing violence. That real non-violence is to give people Krishna consciousness by which they can attain the spiritual kingdom and end their cycle of suffering. So in order to give Krishna pleasure, we must bring his devotees back to his lotus feet, following in the footsteps of the gopis. If we think about the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, the most exalted devotees, what did they do? They were absorbed in the mood of the gopis. It is said in the Sat Goswami Astaka by Srinivasacharya, Gopi Bhava Rasamritabdi Lahari, Kalola Magno Mohu. They were merged in the ecstatic ocean of the gopis' love for Krishna, and they bathed always and repeatedly in the waves of that ocean. And what was the main activities of the Goswamis? They scrutinizingly study the revealed scriptures to establish the message of Krishna and eternal religious principles for the benefit of all. And they established temples so that everybody could be engaged in the worship of Krishna. And these are the pastimes we're meant to take advantage of, and we're meant to get involved in, and we're meant to spread the glories of. A lot of people will probably be wondering, like, how do we preach or get involved in Sankirtan during this pandemic? I don't know if anyone else is thinking that, but I've been definitely finding it quite difficult. It's much harder because we can't be physically with anybody during this time, but there's so many online ways. Actually, Vaisheshika Prabhu has led the North American book distribution team, and they are just calling up people. They're calling people and trying to distribute books to them, all their contacts that they've accumulated all these years. So they're doing, and they actually distributed way more books than before, when they weren't during the pandemic. So that's quite amazing. And there's so many other ways. It's not just by calling people up. So the temples are calling people up and posting the books, but there's also a lot of online ways. I see people are making videos with messages of Krishna and sharing it. I've been seeing that so much of kirtan's been happening online. And I think this is probably the most the holy name has been chanted online during this pandemic time than before. So I know Jahnavi was doing kirtan very often, and so many devotees all over the world are just chanting, spreading the message, preaching Krishna consciousness. Because if you look at the world and what's happening here, it's very obvious. It's becoming more and more obvious that there's no happiness here. We can see with the pandemic, and if it's not a pandemic, it's going to be some other kind of suffering, just some other kind of material misery that we all experience. Nobody is exempt from material miseries, and because it's a cycle, it's a never-ending cycle. The only thing that can alleviate this is if we take to Krishna consciousness. So this message of Krishna consciousness is always relevant. It's always going to be relevant. But even now with the pandemic, it seems more relevant to most people because it's something that has the answers. How do we get out of this? How do we avoid another pandemic? How do we avoid the pandemic of repeated birth and death? So that is actual service to the gopis. And it's service in the mood of the gopis for us that we can understand here now with our conditioning. One of the main ways we can serve is also by taking advantage of Bhadra Purnima. I don't know if it's everyone knows about it, but if you don't, then I'll just share this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which states that if on the full moon day of the month of Bhadra, one places Srimad Bhagavatam on a golden throne and gives it as a gift, he will attain the supreme transcendental destination. What a benediction. So if we want to get out of this material world, this is a nice opportunity also. Bhadra Purnima, everyone can get involved. Just whatever way in which we try to contribute, we will be eternally benefited. And the people who receive the Srimad Bhagavatam will be eternally benefited. So we can try to distribute, we can try to contribute towards it if you don't want to distribute, or give it as a gift, or encourage other people to give it as a gift or to read it. Even just encouraging people to read Srimad Bhagavatam is so beneficial. So I wanted to end here just with one more note about these gopis, which I have a prayer to read. A prayer to the gopis. This is a prayer to Indulekha, whose presence invokes a festival of dancing, whose brilliant aura is like green grass, whose cloth beams a fascinating aura like light scarlet pomegranate flowers, whose smiling face outshines the beams of the moon. O Sri Radhika, I happily bow down before your girlfriend, Indulekha. And a prayer to Chitralekha Devi, whose body glows with the attractive effulgence of saffron, whose lovely cloth is glossy like a host of radiant crystals. O Sri Radhika, who offers you clothes exactly according to your own desires, whose heart is full of wonderfully variegated moods, overflowing with compassion, I bow to Chitra. So we can pray to these gopis and ask for their blessings, that we can continue in our Krishna consciousness and we can dive deeper and deeper into the mood of the gopis and do something to help Srila Prabhupada's movement and spread Krishna consciousness to as many souls as we can, because we know that is what will make us actually dear to Krishna. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, for one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. This is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 68 and 69. So if we want to become dear to Krishna, then let us engage in the Sankirtan movement. In fact, I've been getting a lot of messages that it's not about us being attracted to Krishna. It's about us attracting Krishna by our service. So it says that the gopis are not trying to see Krishna. They are always engaging other people in seeing Krishna. And in that way, they are seen by Krishna. So we should strive to not just try to see Krishna. I know because I'm always trying to see Krishna. I'm always trying to see the deity of Krishna, but it's not about that. It's about acting in a way such that Krishna will see us. So, Hare Krishna, this is where I'd like to end.
Wow, that was so amazing, so informative, and just powerful, really. It's so relevant. And I see a comment that echoes the same sentiment, that this class was absolutely lovely and relevant to this time. So, Sri Sankirtan Yagya Ki Jai. And truly, there was just so many points. Personally, I have a question for you, Surabhi Kunj. What what has been the most interesting part of your research, and what was that realization of Sankirtan and the gopis like? How did you get to that point, if you don't mind sharing?
So, actually, the most interesting part of my research were all these pastimes that I found of the gopis, which were just so difficult to understand, about like Krishna's dealings with them. And I was thinking with my mundane consciousness, how do I understand this in the correct mood? I always get a bit overwhelmed reading things that just seem like they're going over my head. But I was realizing that the more I'm reading, the more inconceivable it all seems to me. And then I did see this in this book by Vaisheshika Prabhu, Our Family Business, that excerpt about what Srila Prabhupada said, well, what Rameshwar Prabhu said, and then Srila Prabhupada's response, that this is actually service to the gopis. And then I also researched online, and I saw this beautiful article by Vijay Prabhu where he was saying where he was just elaborating on it, and it made me feel happy in a way that I can also participate in the gopis' pastimes in a sense, even while being here. If I can't understand their pastimes with Krishna and Vrindavan, and how they do everything with so much devotion, like just reading about how they offer garlands of cloves, I was wondering how does this happen? and how the gopis are all, when they're making garlands, they have such a pure meditation. The whole act of making the garland, the act of doing anything they do, cooking, dressing, it's all a deep meditation. It's something I can't conceive of, because for me, when I'm doing something, I'm thinking, I'm doing it to get it done. But the gopis, doing all these services is a meditation. It's an experience for them. That is like their love. And so I couldn't understand that. But seeing the connection with Sankirtan, and how in this world here, while we have all of our conditioning and material minds and disturbed minds, how can I actually get into that mood of the gopis? Not possible right now. But I can try to share Krishna's glories. That's something I can do. So I was very happy about that, that connection that Srila Prabhupada also confirmed, because, and it makes sense also, because Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of Radharani. His principal associates are the associates of Vrindavan. And what is their main activity in this world? It's not making garlands only. It's I think they realized in this world we need to also preach the message, because there's so much suffering here. So they came to do a very different type of service, which is equal, as all service is absolute. But for now here, it made me happy that that preaching Krishna consciousness is the service that the gopis are doing. They're very happy when we share Krishna's glories. Just sharing a picture on Facebook of the deities, we're sharing it. So many people are going to take darshan of the deities. So many people are going to receive prasadam. So many people are going to get Krishna's mercy if we dedicate ourselves to sharing Krishna's mercy. So that way, so many people can serve the gopis, and we may not even understand the gopis. We may not understand who they are really, but we can serve them. In this book, Vaisheshika Prabhu also wrote one of his statements that even an ordinary person can engage in Sankirtan, which means even just a new person who doesn't even know that much can engage in Sankirtan, and they're already serving the gopis. So that was quite amazing to read.
Wow,
Yeah,
that
it's
was,
confidential service.
sorry. No, that was such a, that response was so well put together in terms of, in this moment, I reflected so deeply in terms of what you just said. And I'm also just going to take so much back and be like, okay, I'm going to unpack this more and really go into what you just said. And I think that's so special. So thank you for sharing that. We have one last question.
Sure.
What can we do to always inspire ourselves to even have an ounce of devotion and mood of the gopis?
Wow. That's a deep question. I think inspiring ourselves comes from, well, for me personally, I am not really qualified to answer this question, but for me personally, inspiration comes when we are convinced of Krishna consciousness, when we are convinced that this is the solution to every problem we have. This is what is going to give me eternal happiness. So then we will be inspired to be Krishna conscious when we know this is the only way. What alternative do we have? And that conviction comes from reading and serving. It comes from the 5 limbs of bhakti, Panchanga bhakti, chanting the holy names, reading Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with the devotees, worshipping the deity, residing in a sacred place. These inspire and nourish us. So when we do these things, even one of those things is so beneficial that we can become convinced. For me, what convinced me was reading Srila Prabhupada's books. That just reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, for instance, just from the first verse of the first canto, you just know you're in contact with something that is transcendental. It is completely pure, not tinged by anything material, no mental speculation, no thoughts of mundane people. This is pure. And if we spend our time in contact with that enough, then we can be convinced, and then we'll be inspired. So one of the points also that Vaisheshika Prabhu made in Our Family Business is that in order to be inspired in Krishna consciousness, we must be feeling that happiness. If we're happy, then we will be inspired. We'll be inspired to share Krishna consciousness, and we'll be inspired to practice it if we can experience happiness from it. And happiness comes from absorption, which means following it, following it seriously, not doing anything half-heartedly. So for me, that was reading. Reading definitely helps me with that. I need to be better with the others. Chanting, I definitely need to be better with that and be more attentive, because I know that if I become more attentive, then I will be more inspired and relish more happiness, and therefore be more inspired to give Krishna consciousness. Because the mood of the gopis is pure devotion. It means their only thought is Krishna. They don't have other thoughts. And if we look at us, we have several other thoughts. We have innumerable other thoughts in our minds. So to cut out all of the junk, which is like 99% of our minds, and have that Krishna taking up the 100% of our mind, will take a bit of time. May take many lifetimes, but reading, absorbing ourselves in reading, chanting, worshipping the deity, all of these activities will help us with that inspiration. And everybody will have a different nature and a different activity that speaks to them. There's people who would love to, whose minds are completely absorbed and they're worshipping the deity, and that's beautiful. And you can see it when you take darshan. So it's encouraged to just do more and more of that. Just fill up your life. I know, Arvash, you're a dancer. So if you dance for Krishna more and more, then you will be inspired more and more in Krishna consciousness.
Thank you for using me as an example, but definitely you mentioned a point earlier that preaching or distributing the philosophy or the essence of Krishna consciousness is not limited to just book distribution. You can do it through kirtan, and we've seen it through sharing of darshans. And just like you mentioned, me as a dancer, personally, one of my ways is through dance and through bhajans and doing different pieces on Krishna Leela. So thank you. I appreciate it.
And so much art. I'm really, really loving seeing the art, the Krishna conscious art, because it's inspiring so much thought. If you just post a video dancing or a picture, painting something, it creates so many waves of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, most definitely. So with that, we have come to the end of today's session. And I just want to say thank you so much to Her Grace Sarabi Kunj Mataji, or, Sarabi Kunj, for joining us, for giving us her time this evening, for sharing such beautiful points and descriptions on Chitralekha Devi and Indulekha Devi and the Sakhis and their relationships with Krishna. She noted that Chitralekha, one of her services includes making garlands of cloves. And if you know what a clove is, it's a very, very small little aspect of nature, if you want to say. And it's such an interesting thing to understand that they prepared that Chitralekha Sakhi prepared this whole garland of it for Krishna and Radharani. And we see that Indulekha is an expert dancer, This is the purpose of this program or the series is to understand these gopis and their services. So thank you all so much for joining us on Facebook, on Zoom, for giving us your time this Saturday evening to understand and unpack these personalities known as the Asta-sakhis. This program is to build up to the celebrations of Radha Ashtami on Wednesday, and we're so excited. And what better way to celebrate Srimati Radharani than by glorifying her close associates and girlfriends. So thank you all so very much for joining the Krishna Balaram Youth Group tonight. And please join us again tomorrow at 7:30, where we will be discussing two very interesting personalities. Yet again, Asta-sakhis, Tungavidya Devi and Sudevi, and we're super excited. So with that, enjoy the rest of your evening. Hare Krishna. Shri